Don't go in. The roof's about to collapse with someone yelled through the smoke, but she rushed in barefoot, tears mixing with ash and heat. She carried the boy out, vanished before anyone could ask her name. Who was that woman, and why would a billionaire return 20 years later looking only for her? Welcome to QH. Let's uncover what really happened. Emily Sanders, 29, worked as an emergency dispatcher in the small town of Bedford, Maine. Her voice was the calm in the midst of crisis, steady, reassuring, the first line of response when disaster struck. Years of handling emergencies had trained her to maintain composure when others couldn't. A single mother with a 5-year-old daughter, Emily lived a quiet life, her apartment walls decorated with her child's colorful drawings and a single worn photograph of her father in his firefighter uniform. She kept to herself, preferring night shifts when her daughter stayed with a neighbor, an arrangement that made childcare possible on her limited income. What most Bedford residents didn't know was that Emily carried a shadow within her, the memory of her father, a firefighter who died saving children from a burning daycare center when she was just 12. His last words to her had been simple: always do right, Emmy. When the moment comes, you'll know. That moment arrived on a frigid December night in 2005. Emily was driving home after her shift, the clock on her dashboard reading 2:17 a.m., when she noticed an orange glow illuminating the snow-laden trees along River Road. Slowing down, she saw thick black smoke billowing from a wooden cabin, partially hidden by pine trees. Her dispatcher instincts kicked in. She pulled over, grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Structure fire at 42 River Road, she reported to her colleague now manning the desk. Send all available units. As Emily approached the house, the heat intensified. Through the ground floor window, she spotted movement. A small boy, perhaps 6 years old, pounding on the glass, screaming silently behind the thick pane. The door frame was already engulfed in flame. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors in hastily thrown on coats helplessly watching the inferno. Someone was shouting about propane tanks in the back. Another voice mentioned the fire department was at least 8 minutes away. There's a child inside, Emily yelled, but the gathered neighbors only stared in horror. An older woman grabbed Emily's arm. Are you crazy? You have a daughter at home. Wait for the firefighters. Emily's hand trembled as she pulled away. Her father's face flashed before her. How many times had she imagined his final moments, rushing into flames while others ran out? She had sworn never to put her daughter through that same loss, but the boy's terrified face pressed against the window, illuminated by the dancing flames behind him, broke something open inside her. Not one more child, she whispered. Not if I can help it. A man's voice cut through the crackling flames. Don't go in. The roof's about to collapse. Emily stripped off her heavy coat, wrapped it around her arm, and kicked off her shoes. The snow bit at her bare feet, but she barely noticed. Time seemed to slow as she circled to the side of the house, where the fire hadn't yet reached. Finding a window with less smoke, she used her coat-wrapped arm to smash the glass. Jagged shards tore through the fabric, slicing into her forearm, but adrenaline dulled the pain. Smoke poured out, and Emily pulled herself through the opening, dropping to her knees inside to stay below the thickening black cloud. Hello, where you? She called, crawling forward. The heat scorched her lungs with each breath. A faint cry guided her through the disorienting haze. She found the boy huddled under a table, paralyzed with fear. His pajamas were singed, his face streaked with soot and tears. I'm going to get you out, Emily promised, pulling him close. Cover your mouth with this. She tore off part of her shirt sleeve and pressed it to his face. As they made their way back toward the window, a section of ceiling collapsed behind them, sending embers cascading across the floor. Emily lifted the boy through the broken window, then climbed out after him just as flames began licking at the curtain. She carried him across the yard, her bare feet numb on the frozen ground. As neighbors rushed forward to take the child, the distant wail of sirens finally pierced the night. Emily set the boy down gently, disappeared into her car, and drove away before anyone could ask her name. All she left behind were footprints in the snow, singed flip-flops by the broken window, and a homemade cotton bracelet that had slipped from her wrist during the rescue. Sometimes true heroes don't need recognition. They simply do what's right, then quietly disappear. Have you ever met someone like that? The boy rescued from the fire was named Luke Wilson, an orphan living with his grandmother after losing both parents in a car accident the year before. The fire, caused by faulty Christmas lights, had started while his grandmother was working the night shift at the local hospital, leaving Luke alone in the house. In the days following his rescue, Luke became withdrawn, speaking only when necessary. The trauma of the fire lingered in his eyes, but something else did too: an obsession with the woman who had saved him. Luke began drawing the same figure repeatedly, a woman with a ponytail, tears on her face, and distinctive markings on her left arm. "My guardian angel," he would whisper when asked about his artwork. His grandmother kept these drawings, amazed at how consistent the details remained, despite Luke's young age. The cotton bracelet became his most prized possession. Though singed and dirty, he kept it in a small wooden box beneath his bed, occasionally taking it out just to hold it. When his therapist asked why the bracelet was so important, Luke simply said, "Because she chose to come back for me when she could have stayed safe." Meanwhile, Emily's life unraveled in quiet, unseen ways. The deep cut on her arm required 15 stitches, which she claimed came from a kitchen accident. The second-degree burns on her hands and forearms were harder to explain, forcing her to take unpaid leave from the dispatch center. Her absence during a critical emergency, the very fire she had responded to, raised questions. When security footage from nearby gas stations revealed her car in the vicinity, her supervisor called her in. "You abandoned your post, Emily. You went off duty without proper handover procedure." "I was heading home," she replied, hiding her bandage arms under the table. "I saw the fire and called it in." But the timeline didn't match her story. Emily received a formal reprimand, and her already precarious financial situation worsened. Unable to type efficiently with her injured hands, she eventually resigned from her dispatcher position, finding night work at a bakery, where the owner didn't ask too many questions about her scars. Emily never regretted her decision. On difficult nights, when her daughter asked why they had to move to a smaller apartment, why mommy worked nights and slept days, Emily would look at the burn scars on her arms and remember the boy's face. That was enough. She never sought recognition, never told anyone about that night. The scars became her private testament, evidence of the moment she had honored her father's memory by choosing to run toward danger rather than away from it. Years passed. Luke's grandmother died when he was 14, leaving him to navigate the foster system. Against all odds, he excelled in school, particularly in computer science. By 18, he had created his first successful app. By 22, his startup had attracted major venture capital. By 26, Luke Wilson had become Luke Harrison, taking his grandmother's maiden name, the billionaire founder of SecurityNet, a cybersecurity firm that had revolutionized data protection. In 2024, nearly 20 years after the fire, Emily, now 49 and still working at the same bakery, received an unusual phone call while preparing the morning's first batch of pastries. "Is this Emily Sanders?" a male voice asked. "Yes, who's calling at 4 a.m.? You lived in Bedford in 2000. Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the pre-dawn February air. "Who is this? Do you still have that cotton bracelet?" She hung up immediately, her hands trembling. Emily had never mentioned the bracelet to anyone. How could a stranger know about it after all these years? The next morning, an unmarked envelope appeared at her apartment door. Inside was a grainy photograph she had never seen before, showing her carrying a small boy away from a burning house, her ponytail distinctly visible, despite the smoke. Someone had been there, someone had seen her. That evening, while folding laundry with the television on for background noise, Emily froze at the sound of a familiar name. A special report featured America's youngest tech billionaires, with Luke Harrison as the centerpiece interview. The camera panned across his sleek office, focusing on the handsome young man whose boyish features still held echoes of the child she remembered. But what made Emily drop her laundry basket was the small wooden box visible on the for her as a child. "Harrison," the interviewer asked, "if you could go back in time, what's the one thing you would most want to do?" Luke's expression softened, revealing vulnerability beneath his polished exterior. "I'd find the woman who saved my life during a house fire when I was sick. I'd give her back what should have been hers all along." The camera lingered on his face before cutting to commercial, but Emily remained frozen, a coffee mug slipping from her fingers and shattering on the floor, much like the careful anonymity she had maintained for 2 decades. She never sought credit, never wanted recognition, but now it seemed recognition was seeking her. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She stood before her bedroom mirror, examining the silvery burn scars that wrapped around her left forearm like a roadmap of that fateful night. For years she'd hidden them under long sleeves, even in summer. They were her private reminder, never meant to be seen by the world. Her daughter, now 25 and living in Boston, called the next day. "Mom, there's something weird going on. A private investigator contacted me asking about you and some fire in Tooth." "What's this about?" Emily sank into her chair. "It's an old story, sweetie, nothing important." "Well, it must be important to someone. He mentioned a billionaire is looking for you." After hanging up, Emily opened her bedside drawer and removed a small wooden box, twin to the one she'd seen in Luke's office. Inside lay a simple cotton bracelet blackened at the edges, a child's craft project that had somehow become the thread connecting past to present. Have you ever been forgotten after doing the right thing? Do you think anyone would come back to say thank you after 20 years? Emily's quiet life imploded almost overnight. A local reporter discovered her identity through town records and published a speculative piece. Bedford's mystery hero, local woman may have saved tech billionaire. Soon her apartment building was surrounded by news vans. Former colleagues from the dispatch center gave interviews, expressing shock that mild-mannered Emily Sanders had secretly performed such a brave act. The manager of Bedford's fire station, where Emily's father had once served, told reporters, "I protected her privacy all these years, but I'm amazed. This story is finally coming to light." Emily stopped answering her door, called in sick to the bakery and drew her curtain. The attention felt like a violation of something sacred. Her private act of courage turned into public spectacle without her consent. "I never wanted this," she told her daughter over the phone. "I just did what anyone would have done." "Mom, not everyone would run into a burning building barefoot, and this guy spent 20 years trying to find you. Don't you think you should at least talk to him?" Emily remained resolute in her silence, even as social media exploded with the hashtag #FindEmilyBedford. Some praised her heroism, others questioned her motives for remaining anonymous so long. Amateur sleuths dug into her employment history, discovering her disciplinary record from the dispatch center. Suddenly her reasons for leaving that job became fodder for conspiracy theory. Maybe she was running from something else, one popular thread suggested. Why hide a good deed unless you're hiding bad ones too? The speculation stung more than the burns ever had. On a rainy August morning in 2025, Bedford's usually quiet Main Street erupted with activity as four gleaming black SUVs pulled up outside the town's modest fire station. Security personnel in dark suits emerged first, scanning the gathering crowd before opening the rear door of the second vehicle. Luke Harrison stepped out, his casual attire, jeans and a simple button-down shirt, at odds with his estimated $4.2 billion net worth. Camera flashes illuminated his face as he nodded politely to onlookers. "Mr. Harrison, are you here about Emily Sanders?" reporters called out. Luke raised a hand, asking for quiet. "I've come to speak with Mayor Collins and Fire Chief Peterson. After that, I'll make a statement." The meeting lasted less than 30 minutes. Now when Luke emerged, the town officials flanking him were expressions of stunned disbelief. "Citizens of Bedford," Luke began, his voice carrying across the now silent crowd. 20 years ago, I was a scared 6-year-old trapped in a burning house on River Road. Every expert who reviewed the case later confirmed I had less than 2 minutes before the fire would have reached me. The fire department, despite their best efforts, was still 7 minutes away. He paused, emotion briefly overwhelming him. Someone made the difference between those numbers. Someone chose to risk everything for a child she didn't know. Luke gestured to an assistant, who set up a portable screen. This footage has never been shown publicly. The video, grainy but clear enough, showed Emily carrying Luke from the burning house. It had been recorded by a neighbor's security camera, positioned just right to capture the moment she emerged from the smoke, her hair singed, feet bleeding, determination etched on her face. "For 20 years I've searched for this woman. I hired investigators, cross-referenced hospital records for burn treatments, interviewed every witness, and finally I found her, still in Bedford, still working night shifts, still hiding her scars under long sleeves." The crowd murmured, as Luke continued, "I'm here today to announce that I've purchased the Bedford fire station and surrounding property. The town council has approved my plan to rebuild it as a state-of-the-art emergency response center with one condition: that it be named after the woman who showed me what true courage looks like." Gas rippled through the crowd. The Emily Sanders Emergency Response Center will be the most advanced facility in the state, with equipment and training resources that small towns like Bedford rarely see. Additionally, I'm establishing a $10 million scholarship fund for children of first responders. Reporters shouted questions, but Luke raised his hand again. "There's something else I want to share." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. Opening it, he revealed the cotton bracelet, faded and fire-damaged. "I kept this for 20 years. It fell from her wrist as she carried me to safety. To me it's more valuable than any possession I own." The crowd fell silent. Many wiped away tears. "I'd like to return it to its rightful owner." Luke scanned the faces before him. "Emily Sanders, if you're listening, this belongs to you." At the back of the crowd, standing in the shadow of a maple tree, Emily watched in silence. She had come to spite herself, drawn by a need to understand why her past had suddenly crashed into her present. Hearing Luke speak, seeing the bracelet she had made with her daughter so many years ago, unlocked something within her. A recognition that perhaps her story wasn't just hers anymore. As the crowd dispersed following Luke's announcement, Emily found herself walking toward the fire station rather than away from it. A security guard noticed her approach. "Ma'am, the area is closed to the public right now." Emily hesitated, then slowly rolled up her left sleeve, revealing the distinctive burn scars that spiraled up her forearm, matching exactly the marks visible in the video footage. The guard's eyes widened. He spoke quietly into his radio. Moments later, Luke emerged from the station. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The woman who had run into fire and the boy she had carried out, now both adults marked in different ways by that night. "You kept it all these years," Emily finally said, nodding toward the box in his hand. "It was all I had of you," Luke replied. "My grandmother said it was proof angels existed." Emily smiled slightly. "I'm no angel, just a dispatcher who couldn't follow protocols." "You're the reason I'm alive," Luke said simply. "And the reason I found a security. Our company motto is when seconds matter, because you taught me they do." The following day, Bedford witnessed something extraordinary. The official announcement ceremony for the new emergency center became something more. A long overdue recognition of heroism that had gone uncelebrated for 2 decades. Emily, finally persuaded to attend, found herself called to the podium, standing beneath a banner bearing her father's favorite quote, "Courage is fear that has said its prayer." She faced the community that had been her home for nearly 50 years. "I didn't do anything special," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I just couldn't watch and do nothing. My father was a firefighter. He died saving children. When I saw Luke through that window, I heard my dad's voice saying, 'Always do right, Emmy.'" For the first time in public, Emily displayed her scarred arm. "These marks reminded me every day that I made the right choice. I never needed thanks. I never wanted recognition." But standing here today, her voice broke as Luke approached, holding the wooden box. "This belongs to you," he said, offering the bracelet. Emily carefully took it. "I made this with my daughter the week before the fire. It was her favorite colors, purple and green. It kept me safe for 20 years, Luke said, like a talisman. Emily smiled through tears. "My father told me once that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about being terrified, and moving forward anyway." As Luke embraced her, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Emily's daughter rushed forward from where she had been seated, joining the embrace. 3 lives connected by fire and fate by a single decision made in smoke and flame. 20 years before. The next day's headline read, "The Angel of Bedford Fire Station. Woman who saved billionaire finally receives her due." But the most profound moment came after the crowds dispersed. Emily stood alone in the old fire station, running her fingers over her father's name on the memorial wall. Luke found her there. "I bought this place for you," he said quietly, "but I think it was always yours." Emily nodded, understanding something deeper than the property transaction. "We keep what matters by giving it away," she replied. Have you ever witnessed someone finally recognized for their silent heroism? Type courage if you believe that doing what's right will always be remembered, even if it takes 20 years. Emily declined the offer to have the center named solely after her. Instead, it became the Sanders Wilson Memorial Emergency Response Center, honoring both her father and Luke's grandmother, 2 people who had shaped their lives through sacrifice and love. She didn't return to the bakery or the dispatch center. Instead, Emily accepted a position as the community outreach coordinator for the new facility, teaching free first aid classes and emergency preparedness to Bedford residents. Her quiet competence and understated manner made her approachable, especially to children who were fascinated by the story of the fire angel, but found in Emily a very human mentor. Each morning, Emily could be seen bringing coffee to the young firefighters and paramedics, many of whom had grown up hearing stories about her father. She lived in a modest house near the station, close enough to walk to work, with her now adult daughter occasionally visiting from Boston. Everyone has a defining moment, Emily often told her students. "I just hope you'll choose well when yours arrives." On the wall of the main training room hung a frame containing 2 items, the restored cotton bracelet, and a simple quote. "Courage is a decision made in seconds that echoes through lifetimes." Next to it hung 2 photographs, Emily carrying Luke from the fire and her father in his uniform, both images speaking to the same legacy of service. During a documentary filmed about the center, a young firefighter recruit summed up what many felt. "When people ask me what a hero looks like, I don't think of Superman. I think of Miss Sanders making coffee in the break room, scars on her arms, quietly going about her day." Emily's daughter, now working as a paramedic herself, shared her perspective. "Mom never talked about that night,
but now I understand why she always told me that the right thing and the easy thing are rarely the same choice. The most profound transformation, however, was in Emily herself. The woman who had hidden her scars for decades now wore short sleeves without hesitation. The privacy she had guarded so fiercely gave way to a different kind of strength, the courage to be seen, to acknowledge that her story might help others find their own bravery. On the one-year anniversary of the center's opening, Luke visited again. He found Emily teaching a class of elementary school children how to call 911 effectively. "Does it ever feel strange," he asked afterward, "having people know your story after keeping it secret for so long?" Emily considered this, looking out at the training yard where new recruits were practicing rescue techniques. "Not strange," she finally answered, "just different. Like I've been carrying something heavy alone, and suddenly there are helping hands everywhere." She touched the bracelet on her wrist, the original safely preserved in its frame, this one a new creation, made by local children, inspired by her story. "Not everyone gets thanked for doing the right thing," Emily said softly, "but if you choose right, the world remembers. Even one small act of courage can change a bad day, a life, and sometimes the entire world." Share a moment when someone's bravery made all the difference for you. Subscribe to QH Incredible Stories, where courage is remembered every day. Remember, sometimes the gift you leave behind isn't what you do, but how you live. Lena didn't ask for statues or speeches. All she ever wanted was to make sure someone made it home who might not have otherwise. That her name would live on, etched not just in granite, but in gratitude, was more than she ever dreamed. In the end, it wasn't the flames she conquered, but the years of quiet forgetting, now replaced by a firehouse filled with memory, laughter and legacy.